Hey everybody, and welcome back to another week at Beyond the Trailer Park. And this is actually we're a little about 3 days past the actual date, but this is our 3-year anniversary show, so we're kind of excited about that. Woo!
Hooray!
And of course, well, first of all, I gotta say I enjoyed watching Bryce headbang into the intro music over there. That was fun. So
you feel it in your bones. You got to get into it. Got the little demon horns out. I was feeling it.
So I'll mix up the order a bit tonight. So joining us from over in there in Seattle again, good evening, Bryce.
Hello, and I just have to point out before we get into the meat and potatoes of this show, one of my favorite things about touring church history sites is the little tiny snippets that you learn about culture and history. And one of those was when I visited a printing press, and I learned about the furniture and the casing and uppercase and lowercase and all of these useful terms. And one of my favorite terms was the term dingbat, which they use it because a dingbat is something used in a printing press that's just a little flourish or something in between columns that's just pretty and it takes up space and doesn't add any information. So on today's show, I haven't actually watched what we're reviewing, so I am the resident dingbat. So thank you for having me on, Deb.
Awesome.
That's okay. Brilliant. You can ask us questions about it now. So you have
even better. Yes.
See now, Bryce, if you were actually here in the studio, I would have this for you to wear.
That is magical.
I'm not actually wearing it because it's actually kind of goes too high, and my camera angle was all fucked up. But yeah, you can pretend you're wearing these guys.
I'm actually feeling them. Maybe we need to get like a whatever the photo thing effect on the iPhones or Galaxies and like superimpose that for the listeners listening, not watching it. It is a wonderful, like a demon ear things, but the horns are bats, little red and black bats. It's just
it's a hairband with like little bats on the end of springs that while
I hear hairband and bats, I'm thinking we're going to rock out. What do you?
Yeah, woohoo! Well, thank you for popping in with us anyway, Bryce. And all the way from one of my favorite states of North Carolina. Good evening, Professor Stephen.
Good evening and greetings from North Kakalaki.
I actually got a last time
called Kakistani.
Yeah.
when I was in Milwaukee there with Bryce, I came home with the North Carolina quarter.
All right.
No one can actually see that, but it has the Blue Ridge Parkway on it, so I'm keeping that.
And being that it's North Carolina, it's worth approximately 20 cents.
Yes. Well, I'm going to get my husband to drill a hole in it and put it on a keychain.
Awesome.
Yay.
Yeah.
And over from the wilds of Mississippi, good evening, Miss Morgan.
Yes, our quarters are worth even less.
For quarters or nickels.
Is that you?
Yes.
She's looking extra spiffy tonight.
Yeah, I actually wore makeup and decided not to look like a ghost for a show and wake up like 10 minutes before.
That was me. I don't wear makeup.
Awesome. And of course, over in Pennsylvania, good evening, Beth.
Howdy, howdy. And I am really glad to see Morgan because I know she's been studying really hard in her 3rd year of law school. So it's nice to have her input.
Yeah, they said that 3 year was supposed to bore you to death, and I was just thinking, when? Because I had like all these papers, and then my teacher decided to do a midterm, which is almost unheard of after your 1st year of law school. So that was fun. But she said like the material that we did on the midterm, we wouldn't be responsible for on the final. So I was just like, yes, less to study. But yeah, and then I had to do a 25-page paper, but because I was studying for my midterm, it was like 4 days before it was due, and everybody was like, how much do you have done? I was like, a page? but I finished it, so I'm sure
I remember those days, except I was the girl who, the night before the 30-page paper was due was like, I should probably go to the library and get some books on that.
I did that with my autism paper. That ended up being 40 pages.
I've done, it's 7 p.m. the day before I have to turn it in. I lock myself in the computer lab because I know the guy who is the TA at the computer lab and spend literally the entire night until dawn writing the paper at the last possible fucking second. So I could run down the hall at 7 a.m. and slip it under the professor's door before he comes in.
See, I can't do that. I can't procrastinate that much because then I end up giving myself a panic attack, and my response to having a panic attack is, this would be a great time to have a nap.
Mm.
Do that.
Yeah.
See, I went back to college exactly 20 years after I went to university. And the one part about college now that I thought was fucking amazing, I can turn shit in my living room on the computer in my pajamas and then immediately keel over on the couch and go to sleep.
Oh yeah, that revolution happened shortly after I graduated in undergrad. No more running down the hall terrified because not a moment late.
That was, I lived in residence the whole time I was there. And so we had the same cafeteria crew every day. It was the same people. They always knew because that was the only time I ever showed up for breakfast was right after I had handed it. They're like, oh, what was due this morning? Because I was there. Like, oh, I had this abnormal psych paper, man. Like, fuck.
Of course, nowadays, though, whenever you do submit things online, they'll run it through a plagiarism
yes.
and look on the internet and see if
yeah. And so that was an interesting learning curve for me because when I went to school and university, we all copied shit from each other all the time. So the first time that cropped up, and I mean, they kind of told us about it, but when I was getting they overlook it, but by the time I finished the 1 year I did, I was getting flagged by the stuff that I'd handed in previously in the semester.
Okay. Well, I had to grade papers and things for a while when I was teaching, mostly just labs, and a lot of kids don't take their chemistry labs very seriously. Especially their homework assignments, the few like 2 or 3 little projects you have to do at home, they don't take them seriously, so they plagiarize the hell out of those things. And I'm like, we do have an algorithm. It will tell me what web page you got it from. But my God, some of the laziness. One person turned into paper, I had to flunk them. One person turned into paper, hadn't even changed the fonts from the various web pages that they had copied.
So it was like multiple fonts all the way.
Multiple fonts with links still in there, highlighted.
Oh my God.
Yeah. They got a 0. They got a 0 on it.
I guess.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
That's brutal. But yeah, I was amazed by that. I mean, it's cool because, you shouldn't be copying. I mean, like I said, 25 years ago, we would all get together and be like, okay, this is my brother's paper from 3 years ago. Just make sure you change a few, paragraphs up and add some stuff to it and whatnot. And I mean, it wasn't easy to do that because we didn't have word processors. We had, I was one of the few, I had a Commodore 64, so I could do word processing every 3 pages.
Right.
I was one of the lucky ones, man. Everybody else is like, I got to pay some nerdy kid to go type all my shit up so he can get it. Yeah,
I made a fortune in college.
I remember you saying you made lots of money typing.
Yeah. At the time, I could type about 100 to 120 words a minute. Now I'm lucky if I can type 2.
Damn. Oh, well.
But yeah, I used to type everybody's papers.
That was the 2 best bird courses I ever took in high school was typing. And I only did it because I was like, oh, easy credit. How did I know I was going to be doing computer shit day in and day out?
No one saw it coming, huh?
No, but I loved when I went back to college. This was like 2013 now. Freaking out all of the youngins with stories of college before the internet.
Oh, God.
Right. where
It
everything was in
great.
books or on microfiche and all that sort of thing.
You actually had to go
love
physically
microfiche.
to the fucking library, and you
I
actually
had to
had
pull
to.
microfiche once in law school for a because I'm on the law journal, and
Right.
so I have to last year when I in my second year of law school, what I'd have to do is the article we decided to publish, we would have a binder, and we would have to find every single source the author used. And so mine was about like the slave back in the 1800s. And so it was on microfilm. I had to go to the library and I asked them about the microfilm, and the student worker looked terrified. She was like, what? And I was just like, I'll find it. I'll figure it out. So I kind of had to teach myself how to do it. And I remember my dad called me that night and I was like, yeah, I just had to do microfilm. He was like, are you going to law school in 1972? Like, what's going on? And I was like,
Well-
yeah, a law journal kind of operates like it is a law journal in 1972. That's kind of how Mississippi in general operates. Like, we're the 70s compared to like everywhere else in the
Oh
country.
no.
But
Well,
yeah,
I know a
just
couple
awful.
teachers and a couple professors in college, and they actually have to stipulate in their syllabi for papers that you must use at least 3 hard copy books. So in IE, you have to go to the fucking library.
Well, whenever I was doing my thesis,
And people are like, ah,
yeah,
because everybody's using online sources, which isn't a bad thing, but going to the library is becoming such a novelty now that people don't even know how to use a fucking card catalog.
right, yeah, and well, they have computers now that will search for you
Yes.
and tell you what books are
Yeah.
there. I mean, you know, and then you get the number, the card catalog number, and go find it.
Mhm.
It's really not difficult. It's much easier now than it was.
Even in university back in 92, they actually had a computer like search system where you could
Yep.
search
Yeah.
even
Sure.
then.
Yeah.
But it wasn't,
I mean,
there were
solid.
times where you would search for something in that, you knew was in the collection and the computer wouldn't find it. And then you had to
Mhm.
go and ask the librarian, okay, how does this Dewey Decimal shit work again?
Yeah, there's some sources I actually prefer books, and like with law, there's certain like statutes. Sometimes I like to look at books, and then some because it's done by subject.
Right.
Right.
And then there's certain key sites that give you cases about certain topics that I like better in the hard copy.
Mhm.
But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much everybody just uses Westlaw and LexisNexis now. And I
Mhm.
just hear horror stories from old attorneys, like you
Yeah,
had to
well-
like go find the library and you had to buy like a $3,000 set of books like every 3 years, and I'm just
Oh,
like,
shit.
Jesus, yeah, it's expensive. I mean, Westlaw and Lexus ain't cheap either. Like that's why
Yeah.
That's why I get all the free shit I can from them now. All the
Yeah.
water bottles and keychains and highlighters. Like they'll have that highlighter bowl out there, and I'll grab like 10 because I know I'm gonna pay for it later.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when I did my thesis, I had to use some books because some of the stuff I was looking at was so old. Like some of the primary references for a technique, you may be referencing a paper from 2014, but it may reference a paper from 2000 or from 1980, and then that may reference a paper from 1954. And eventually, you get to the point where the library is not willing to pay for the extended, or maybe these things haven't
Right.
actually been scanned in and can't even be found online. And so you got to go down in the stacks and find them if you're lucky enough that your library actually has them. And that happened to me. There was a few journals I was Xeroxing in the library for my thesis. So yeah, books are still good.
Wow.
Speaking
for
of
sure.
books,
Yes.
speaking of books, we watched a
our
film.
movie, it's from a book.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mazes and Monsters was the movie we decided to watch. It was a terrible decision, and I regret it.
It was your suggestion.
Yes,
dude.
I was wrong.
You knew what we were getting into.
Yeah, it was boring and dumb. Those are the words I would use to describe it. I watched this movie with a friend of mine who's a huge role-playing fanatic who plays D&D
Right.
and is a DM. And we just sat there the entire time going, God, that's stupid, and just bitching the whole time.
I found other things about the movie more amusing, such as the opening scene. It was the most 80s movie production logo I'd ever seen. Also, I thought sirens quit sounding like that after 1932.
It looked like the opening to like Police Squad.
Yes.
You know, like Naked Gun with this following the siren with a camera. What were you going to say, Bryce?
Well, I was going to say, I did watch just the very intro of it, and hearing your guys' reactions and overall summaries here, I feel like I dodged this massive, mustache-wearing, mullet-haired, Camaro-driving bullet that I'm just here to joke about after the fact. You guys had to suffer through the pain.
Oh, God.
I had to just love the theme music. I think I have some of it.
Oh, God.
Oh, here we go.
And we're friends in this world.
Oh, God.
Yep.
Wow. I'm gonna cry.
It reminded me of a 4th grade dance recital, like a song that they would dance to. It's like a 4th grade dance recital back in 1990. Like it was giving me those vibes. I was like imagining like a squad of girls in windbreakers, because the wind did not stand a chance back then. But yeah, and also I was very confused about why the cops were talking like they were in 1940. So I was like, when is this supposed to take place? Because they're like, look here, you see? And I was just like,
you know the game? Yeah, my kids play. They're all wearing fedoras. Yeah.
Yeah.
The firefighters, I guess it was their oxygen tank. So at first I was like, oh, they found a bunch of dead bodies in a lake and they got to get the diving squad. And then I was like, oh shit, those are firefighters. Like, why do their oxygen tanks look like fucking stupid?
Well, okay, so I have a short scene here so you guys can see that. And
I can't release the name yet.
So did you see that guy walk by? He looked like he was wearing a prison jumpsuit with an oxygen tank on the back.
That may be what they looked like, though. I mean, let's be honest.
Yes.
Gotta use that prison labor.
There's our hard-boiled detective with his fine fedora hat, talking to the hard-boiled reporter with his fine Toby hat. Police Squad in color.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh my God, what's happened? What's happened?
Yeah, see, look at them. Then they've got little white helmets on, and then this guy. Yeah, see, it looks like a prison outfit.
Yeah, well, I'm expecting they're going down in the steam tunnels to rescue the schizophrenic kid who got lost, right?
Yeah.
But no, not exactly. I mean, pretty much exactly, but no, not exactly.
See, I thought it was gonna be like somebody went nuts from the game, because I knew how to do and became a serial killer. Also, he looks like this reporter that you're seeing.
Yes,
he looks like Martin Scorsese, but fat and less Jewish.
Yeah, he does. He does. Yes. And then this is the point in the movie where he describes what Dungeons and Dragons is.
Yeah, what is his exposition?
Let me see if I can.
I have to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anybody wearing a trench coat like that, whatever they say is going to be authoritative.
Exactly.
Even if it's some random dude talking about Dungeons and Dragons that he's never played a single round of in his entire life, whatever he's saying is gospel fucking truth.
That's right. He's a middle-aged man with a trench coat.
This is Bud Hayden, live from Pequod Caverns, where I'll be reporting on the apparent disappearance of a Grant University student, the victim of a seemingly innocent game, Mazes and Monsters. Now, Mazes and Monsters is a fantasy role-playing game in which the players create an imaginary character. These characters are then plunged into a fantasy world of invented terrors. The point of the game is to amass a fortune.
Does that cop not look like he's wobbling around drunk back there? He was like, whoa.
Dropped it to a world of invented terrors. Well,
one of the things to point out is that Rona Jaffe, who wrote the book Mazes and Monsters, wrote it in 3 days.
It seems like it. Yep.
She's never played the game.
No.
At all. And
cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah. She was basically taking advantage of a recent case, which was the Dallas Egbert III case out of Michigan. And this book is supposed to be, quote, it's so fake that
Well,
I mean,
and I'd like to
hyperbolic
point
doesn't even fit. I mean, she has no clue. And this was at the beginning, midpoint of the whole satanic panic, which makes it even worse.
Yeah, but I want to point this out, though. There is nothing religious about this film. There's no saying that Satan's involved. There's no claiming that this leads to the devil. This is the secular world being stupid. Now, this dovetailed nicely with the satanic panic and became a two-headed hydra of it will drive your kids crazy and lead to them worshiping the devil, which is where
part of the issue with the satanic panic, there's actually 4 aspects to it. There's the backmasking of the music, which we all know Tipper Gore was part of when she formed the Parents Media Resource Center.
Right.
And then there was the satanic ritual views, which was highlighted by the book called Michelle Remembers. She's the one that ended up fucking her therapist eventually and getting married. Tonight's topic being Dungeons and Dragons, the role-playing games, and they totally, from my understanding now, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons, so Stephen, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong.
All right.
Dragons is not a LARP. It's not a live-action role-playing game.
No.
It's supposed to be a, quote, board game. And this is where the hyperbole comes in. And supposedly Dungeons and Dragons, even though the religious overtones aren't there, they are there in the sense that the belief back then, and in some cases still today, is Dungeons and Dragons leads to Satanism. It's the gateway drug, so to speak. And then a 4th one that you could probably throw in there is satanic ritual abuse that encompassed the daycare debacles.
Right.
I.e. the McMartin cases. So it's a 4-pronged kind of, they all interwove, and what many people don't realize is that the whole satanic panic did not take root in the U.S. It actually took root in 1964 with a book by British writers A.V. Selwood and Peter Haining called Devil Worship. That's when the modern version of the satanic panic took hold. But it took a while to jump out, and what's really kind of bizarre from my perspective, is that even Canada wasn't spared.
Right.
They had the, as far as the satanic sexual abuse, they had the Martinsville case. So it's all interwoven, which makes, I mean, from my aspect, the way I look at it, because I was actually sucked into this bullshit back in the 80s when it started, it just kind of adds a
So that's like
with,
with me, I'm pretty close to Memphis, because I'm in North Mississippi now, and the West Memphis 3, I remember they were trying to claim was a satanic killing. Yeah, that whole situation was just fucked.
Oh, we lost Bryce.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea, I mean, these are just some of the cases that the preschool cases. We have the McMartin Country Walk, Fallsacres Daycare, the Bernard Barron case, the Bronx 5, We Care, Nursery Montessori. There's like 5 or 6 more, and they were all within a certain time period. And if you've been following the news, the one that really started was the Kern County case. But Fran Keller and Dan Keller out of Austin, Texas, they just were released from prison after 21 years in 2013.
Yes, that's right.
And recently they won an award of $3.4 million because they were wrongfully convicted. So, I mean, this whole thing just encompasses all this.
Oh, yes.
Background.
And also there's the Mike Warnke connection. I mean, that's a seminal...
Oh, yes, I know Mike Warnke very well. I've seen him in concert 3 times.
I saw him once.
Was he the guy that would testify all this bullshit?
Yeah, he would claim that he used to be a satanic priest in a
turban. No, a different guy.
Then. Yeah,
But I know who you're talking about.
Mike Warnke, Jack Chick, Bob Larson are the 3 big names, and then there's a bunch of other people you have like that wrote books. I mean, it's just I've talked about it before. I'm a victim of Bob Larson's mentality. I went through a quote exorcism actually deliverance in today's parlance, because of the teachings that Warnke and all these people put out.
Yep.
And thankfully it didn't fucking kill me, but it fucked me up.
And,
Yeah.
and not to put too fine a point on it, but Mark Warnke was lying. It has been.
Oh, they
he
all
was
were
being
liars.
Cornerstone magazine, which is a Christian, or was a Christian magazine, called him out about 2 or 3 years after his bullshit started.
Yep.
And what's really sad is in the last 2 or 3 years, Warnke's trying to make a comeback.
Yep, as a stand-up comedian, right?
And
well,
yeah, he's trying to go back to his old shtick, and it's like what's his name? A blog piece video on it. He's the Catholic version. And Dub, you remember this conversation because you got booted.
Yes,
he's the Catholic version of Mike Warnke, and he's trying to basically renew Warnke's. He's the one that basically says that Planned Parenthood is a satanic.
Yes, and he was claiming that he did satanic rituals in Planned Parenthood, and they used the blood of aborted fetuses and all of those horse shit. And there was a lie. What was it? Was it WorldNet Daily that had that article? Yes. And Beth and I were commenting, and it took me 20 minutes to get booted from all of WorldNet Daily forever after.
But yeah, she wasn't saying anything, bad. Here I am. I still can comment. I'm like, okay, that's really bizarre.
I know. But I was being nice.
Yeah, she was being really nice. I was the one kind of being an asshole about it.
Well, this makes a good point, though, that the satanic panic isn't over. It's just no longer being reported on by the mainstream news.
Yeah, because they freaked out when I was little about Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Well, what was it? What we were saying before the show, Morgan, we were talking about potentially having someone from the Church of Satan on, and you're like, that's just what my daddy thought was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember the first time.
People thought that his music was satanic because he and I are both huge fans of the band Rush. And so I remember even when I went to school and I had like the cover of a 2112 album with a guy in the star, of his fist raised. Yeah. And everybody thought it started a rumor that I worshiped the devil because they said that star was a pentagram, and I was in Terry, Mississippi. So, God, that's a hellhole I'll never go back to. Like, I'm still in Mississippi, but that is the hell that I have had to crawl out of.
You should have told them that was the star over the manger that foretold of Jesus.
Oh my God, I should have. But yeah, and then weird people kept coming up to my dad and being like, "Oh, we don't like your daughter reading these books," and he was just like, "Why?"
Over Harry
and then
Potter?
They told him they were satanic, and then he was like, "Oh, well, I don't see why these people would lie to me. I guess they're satanic." And then for a while it was that, and then he realized those people were full of shit, and he was like, "Why would people say that?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Do you really think that? Like, somebody in Mississippi would tell you lies?" Like,
everybody in Mississippi tells the truth all the time and knows it too because they're perfect experts on all things.
Yeah, they're a hospitality state, even though they have the #1 amount of lynchings. I'm like, how does that work?
Oh my God.
But I think what's important to take, not to sidetrack it too much into the Satanist part, because as Stephen mentioned, it's really not brought out in the movie, but it is there in an undertone, is that
it's bad psychology more than anything else, but yeah.
Exactly. It's the bad pseudoscience
we'll get to that
from this.
Yep. So I gotta laugh at the beginning of the movie. They start introducing the 3 out of the 4 main characters. We don't get to Tom Hanks right away, but
we get a guy getting out of a limo wearing a German pickle hole.
Oh wait! Oh, you spoiled my screenshot. Damn it!
Go ahead.
Here we go.
I thought this was a movie about someone going crazy. I didn't know it was about the audience going insane while watching the movie.
This kid walks around with this on.
Okay, I was trying to figure this out. I thought it was an equestrian hat, but then I was like, okay,
no,
that's a
That's a German military helmet.
It's called a pickle hub.
One?
It's called a pickle hub, and it was worn during the 19th and early 20th century, specifically World War I is where we get most of the images from it. And I'm like, what the fuck am I watching at this point?
Yeah. I was like, he's a
like
serial killer. He's the one that's going to kill everybody, clearly.
Right, exactly. There's something.
Yeah.
I was like, he's a rich white boy, and then also the mother is clearly on pills. Like, that's what my first, like, she came out, she was like that, darling, and putting in her little diamond earrings, and, like, and then she had this weird net thing and was talking about this French consulate cocktail party, like, a million miles an hour, and then when I saw her redecoration of a room, I was like, yeah, she is, like, drinking a scotch back there and popping a few Valium, and just, like, she is on freaking pills, like all the pills you can think of.
So I have seen this video. I didn't think YouTube allowed it, but I've seen this one before.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And he goes to his room and it's completely decorated like in black and white. It looks like the inside of a hospital, and he starts freaking out about it. And I'm like, okay, you've got two of the most eccentric characters you could possibly put on screen right here. He's wearing a pickle hub, and she redecorated his room in late 19th century surgery, theater. And
here we go. There we go. I was trying to get a good shot of that.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is supposed to be a movie about the dangers of playing Dungeons and Dragons, but as far as I could tell at this point, it's there it is. Yeah.
That's how she redecorated a college age guy's room.
If I were going to write a story about how dangerous X was, I would have normal people be the ones victimized by dangerous X, right? Not a bunch of people that already seem to be mentally disturbed.
Yeah.
How are you going to blame the game on this?
Like, serious mommy issues. Like, what the hell?
My first point was that all of the first three that we meet all have shitty parents. Well, the girl, they are going for the child of divorce angle.
Yeah.
They were talking, she seemed like she had a good mom, but they were talking about how, her father just up and left them all, and like you have that in regular conversation with your parents.
Her mom was
several
a bit
years.
sassy, though. Her mom was a bit sassy with her because she said, "Oh, I'm having this writer's block because I don't think I've, lived life." And I was just like, "Then what the fuck are you writing about? You have to start writing to have writer's block." But anyways, and the mom says, "Well, use your imagination." And I was like, "You sassy bitch, I love you."
But what I want to know,
it goes wrong though. People start using their imagination, and it takes them to Crazy Town. That's the whole point of the movie, right?
See,
don't use your fucking imagination.
I want to know how the hell this girl got to be that much taller than her mother.
Her father is a frost giant.
I ran away and joined the circus.
Yeah.
She's a fucking giant. Or her mother is like seriously tiny. Like if she's not a giant, her mom is smaller than like Lucinda Illusions.
Yeah, and this is the 1980s. Can you dress any more frumpily?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
At least their shoulder pads do fit on screen.
That's true. That's true. I guess it's an after-school special, so if the woman isn't covered from at least the bottom of her chin all the way to her toes, it would be untoward.
Yeah, the peach-colored frilly blouse is not exactly doing it, but yeah.
Oh my God, that girl has a lot of penny loafers. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. and then the other kid. His mother is a total alcoholic, and I don't know what the hell is wrong with his father.
I love her too.
And of course, they're all rich.
Like, they're all my life, like bitching at her husband, and she's like, "I was educated and could be something," and he's like, "Shut up! I hate it when you're drinking." Like,
so you're talking about Tom Hanks's? That's Tom Hanks's parents. We're doing Pretty Boy Dungeon Master's parents here. The blonde guy who is so good looking he can't get laid.
Oh yeah,
that's part of the plot.
I was like, did he write this movie because he was like, and somebody said, "Oh, it's because you're too good looking to be a boyfriend," and then I was just like, did he write this movie because no one seriously tells anybody that. And also, he's too hot to be playing Dungeons and Dragons, and the other guy, like Robbie, starts playing so we can meet girls, and I'm like, yeah, that's never fucking happened.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
What-
that is
what
a stereotype. That is a
what
stereotype,
made-
and I made the same jokes. But to be honest with you, most people I play D&D with are married or have girlfriends, or although I do play with a
these-
couple of virgins.
These kids are ridiculously rich.
Oh, they
But
are.
What made me laugh is this guy,
Mhm.
the actor, because when he first came on screen, I was like, I know that guy from some other show.
Blondie
And
McBlonderson.
he used to play Dr. Tom Hardy on General Hospital when I was in high school.
Oh, okay.
Oh, my grandma watches that.
Oh, thanks.
Every day we would have to watch General Hospital, and my stepmom's show was Days of Our Lives. I remember my brother got really mad at me one day, and he was like, "You're just like Marlena." Because when he was little, he would sit there and watch the soap opera with her, and I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay.
See, I watched it out of when I was a teenager. I would get home because my high school was literally in my backyard, so I could get home by 10 after 3 and only miss the first couple of, the first act before the first commercial. So I would watch it at home every day. So that he played Dr. Tom, which his character on General Hospital was a total spineless wuss too. So
Right.
there's that.
So,
Just
the
to interject
yeah.
on the characters, I know, Stephen, you had mentioned about not having religious overtones,
Mhm.
but if you look at these four characters and the parents and the social situations and social status of the parents, there's your religious undertones. Each one of them represents a different aspect. If you divorced parents, alcoholic parents, and back in the 80s, and I speak to this on a personal level, mental illness as a whole was not understood, especially in the religious circles. Like in my case, my bipolar, which wasn't diagnosed until 1995, I went undiagnosed for a good 12 years, and I exhibited signs, but it's the reliance of blaming a actual mental illness or a personality trait as a spiritual issue, and this is the undertone that runs through the book and through the movie.
Right.
Yeah, because I was wondering, why don't these people get therapy? So many of these issues could have been solved if somebody had gotten therapy or called a doctor or done a number of things, and especially with calling the police or
Well, I want to put out.
But that is actually how it was handled back in the 80s, especially within religious circles. My parents, to this day, well, my mom's dead now, but to this day, do not understand my bipolar because they do not believe in mental illness, which is bizarre considering Dad worked for the mental health department as a CPA, so he saw it every day. But in religious circles, especially your more fundamentalist and your more evangelical circles, issue. My cutting, I mean, that's how the school treated it. They thought that's why I underwent an exorcism, because they thought I was demonically possessed. And that's the undertone within this movie, and especially in the book.
And that is one of the most dangerous things about mainstream religion in this country is the denial of psychology and replacing it with demonology.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Bryce.
Well, and Beth, I didn't grow up through the Satanic Panic. I didn't see it, but I have a hard time believing that it's that much different now. I mean, Stephen, it seems like you were starting to make a point too. Is that same disparaging of science and trying to science our brains seems to be replete throughout religious cultures today. That's not just a holdover from the 80s. That's just how religions treat mental illness by and large, and it's disgusting and damaging.
The reason the 80s stands out is because the 80s is whenever that stuff got televised in mainstream media. When you had
right. We're watching the shit right now.
Right, exactly. That's the only difference. Satanic Panic's still going on. In fact, it's gotten worse in many ways. You listen to someone like Alex Jones or some of these other conspiracy theorist assholes, and they claim that there's blood sacrifices to Moloch and Beelzebub going on daily in the halls.
And it's not just people playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's just the leading politicians of our country that are doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Or Hollywood or the halls of academia. Anybody that don't like.
And that's why I post about it and write about it, is that I mean, my personal experience sucked me in. I obviously I kind of took a quote hiatus, but when I started becoming more active within the atheist community and stuff, I started to see it, and I've mentioned before, couple three, for 3 months every day. Every day, I posted a story about parents exercising their children's. About 80% of the cases, they killed said child because of beliefs such as this. So, as you said, Stephen, it's the satanic panic never ended.
No,
it just scenes, and
it stopped making money in the mainstream.
Well, the money is still there. It's actually now there's I have the article, I just don't have it handy. The reverse is attacking Planned Parenthood. That's one way, and then there's one of the MMS and now turpentine for autism.
Oh God damn it! Yeah, I just recently.
But yeah, see, it's getting. I don't know what mainstream isn't the right word. It's more subtle.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that the Hollywood and the mainstream media—that's a terrible word, mainstream media, but Hollywood and the real media stopped reporting on it. Satanism's not the hot subject for whatever talk show is out right now. Probably right now the hot subject would be alt-right and Nazis and whose child is this? Is it mine or is it his? But that, in the mainstream, it sort of settled down. But underneath that, in the religious community, it never stopped. No. It's still there, and it's terrible. But yeah, for instance, recently, okay, it's interesting this came up because Bryce and I had a conversation, a private conversation, but I don't have a problem talking about it. I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I was doing it in a bad way, and I messaged Bryce, and he told me I really needed to get some therapy, and I had been meaning to for a long time. So I go sign up for some therapy, and I tell my mom, and she looks at me with this scowl on her face. I says, "What?" She says, "I don't think that's a good idea." I say,
I can relate
"Why?"
to that.
She says, "Well, you just need to pray more."
Oh,
yep.
Fuck.
Yep. Yeah. And when I finally came out to my parents about my mental illness, and I got to understand, I didn't talk to them for 7 years prior to this, and I ran into them, all places, the vet's office, and so I started communicating again, and I waited another couple months and finally told them that I was in treatment for bipolar, and the first thing my mom said to me was, "So what family secrets are you telling your therapist?"
Oh,
I'm
boy.
like, I'm telling her the truth. Well, you just need to pray more. I'm like, ew. And by then I was pretty much agnostic, bordering on atheism. It was another couple years before I actually finally admitted I was an atheist. So I was already pretty much out of religion by then, but yeah. Go ahead.
I explained to my mom that it was that depression, at least clinical depression, is your brain not producing the correct chemicals when it needs to produce them, kind of like diabetes. And I said, "You've prayed a lot. Why hasn't God cured your diabetes?" Maybe that wasn't the nicest thing to say, but it came out of my mouth anyway. And she got flustered. And I'm like, it's the same thing here. Even if you're a Christian, you should understand you need doctors, and including ones that help you with your brain. But then again, I guess it depends on your brand, because some Christian brands don't believe in medicine at all. But my parents are Baptists, and Baptists go to the hospital, right? So it's like, why if you really believe that all you need to pray, that all I need to do to get over my problem is just to pray, then why do you go to the doctor? Why do you take insulin? please continue to do that. I don't want you to stop, but yeah.
Well, I know in one blog post I wrote concerning Zachary King, who is the Mike Warnke wannabe of the Catholic world, as I said, this is the sort of Christianist masturbatory fantasy that is still extant. And this is, that its promulgators think that it's the rubes who will actually believe. And basically, they're pandering to their base.
Right.
Is what they're doing. And Deb and I both found out that religious fucktards soak this shit right up.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And another 80s
so, I mean,
thing?
this movie and the subsequent books and other movies, there's a couple more movies out there if we want to review another one. This just fit right in.
I see what you're saying. Yep. Because even at the end of the movie, and we're going to spoil the movie, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I don't think you can make it any more spoiled than it was to begin with.
That's true. It's already rotten, right?
Yeah.
They never consult a psychologist or a psychiatrist. They never show a medical professional, as far as I remember.
Well, they do at the end. They say that, he had to drop out and his mom's making him see this doctor, but he's not, he's still the same.
Yeah, it's not helping.
So it's showing that the doctor's not helping is what they're saying, and he's trapped in this whole delusion forever. Also, another 80s thing I wanted to point out is the peer pressure kind of element, because Robbie's like, oh, I don't know. And then it reminded me of the DARE programs when people, the cops would come in and tell me, oh, all these people are going to offer you all these drugs. And I was just like, when?
Listen, let me tell you what. It's just like back during the war when you went overseas with those whores over there, and just like these drug dealers, you go off to college, some hot big brunette in a sweet little pantsuit will seduce you into a life of mazes and monsters, role playing in a cave, and before you know it, you'll think you're a priest of some pagan god, and you'll stop having sex, and you'll go crazy.
Yeah, and then also it was like the way they were talking about it. What reminded me of of those old about heroin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you froze for a second there.
Oh, yeah. So it reminded me of those pamphlets, when they're trying to get a kid to do heroin. They're like, oh, I don't know about it. I'm supposed to focus on school. And the fact that they skipped school to play, D&D, I was like, what the okay, now you have a problem. And then they're like, we meet multiple times a week. And I was like, who does this? But they said, oh, just do it once. Just do it once. And
just try it. Just try it.
Free sample. It's a free sample. It won't cost you nothing.
And then later you see a commercial of somebody cracking an egg. This is your brain on D&D, and they stab a sword through it.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Then you end up stabbing a guy in an alleyway.
And to be honest with you, as someone who has played D&D, I'm jealous that these people could meet twice a week to play, man. The biggest problem with most role-playing game groups is that you can't seem to fucking find the time, and months go by, and then you lose interest because everyone's schedule is conflicting. But I've never known anybody to skip class to role-play. There probably are some crazy hardcore people doing that, but
by the way, the one thing I didn't catch during the movie, but when I went and skimmed the Wikipedia page later, the JJ, the kid who always wears the goofball hats, he's only supposed to be 16.
Yes, he's only supposed to be 16, and he has
and that relates back to the guy who it's supposed to be the true part about. I forget his name.
JJ's a serial killer. I stand by that.
Yeah.
Listen,
it's a weird guy comes up to you a hat. He's rich, and he's like, "Come join my game." I was like, "Run, Robbie, run! He's gonna kill you." And then when he decided to get him in the cave, I was like, "He's gonna kill everybody!" Oh my god!
Yes, because he goes.
I want to talk about this character in a little bit. This is the character that is featured more than any other character in the movie.
Yeah.
Hang on. Is this the character that at 14 minutes where he's wearing the pilot's cap? He's
yes.
Yeah, looking like he's about to take off of Amelia Earhart.
Okay, he
starts. And he wears the yellow James construction helmet to the
with
black
a tuxedo.
Yeah. With
okay. Right, I had to make sure we're talking about the same person.
I see him wearing the pickle hob in the very first scene. I'm like, okay, this guy's kind of interesting and weird. And then the next scene, he's wearing regular school clothes, but a giant blue cowboy hat.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, oh my god, this is fucking funny hat guy. This is fucking hat guy. And I'm fucking hat guy too, but I wear hats that are appropriate with the outfit that I'm wearing. Immediately I hated this guy. That's like the second time I saw him wearing a hat, like I fucking hate this character and I want this character to die. So then when he invites the guy, okay, he finds out you used to play D&D, did you? We're going to call it D&D. Fuck this Mazes and Monsters shit. You play D&D when you join our group? No, I better not. I nearly funked out of school playing it. I'm in recovery, man. I'm in recovery. Don't bring me a drink. What are you doing? And, he invites him to a party, and there's a soiree going on in his dorm room. Here's a 16-year-old boy in high school with like 15,000 people having a wine party in his dorm room on like the first night of school.
And that's what I want to know.
I was like, did this take place at my college? Because we literally threw like a Gucci Mane concert the day before finals started, and the school sponsored it.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
Did this happen at my school?
This is a private party.
I'm watching that, and I'm thinking, does this kid have like the TARDIS of dorm rooms? Like, how the fuck does he have 100 people in his fucking dorm room? Because I lived in residence, and there was barely enough room for my roommate and I in the fucking room.
Oh, so I know. Yeah. Well, these are rich kids. These are rich kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
you
gotta remember that the character that he's based on, Dallas Egbert III, he was a 16-year-old child prodigy in computers. Okay.
Right.
But what makes him unique, even prior to going to university, he was kind of basically an outcast. A, because of his personality, B, because of his age. One of the reasons I didn't go to college was because I would have only been 17.
Right.
Granted, only a year off, but I graduated a year early. But basically, Dallas, in real life, and that's the main character, Tom Hanks' character, was a confused 16-year-old child prodigy. He had way too much on his plate with family issues, schooling issues, exactly, and it quickly spiraled out of control. And supposedly he had a drug problem.
Right. Drug problem, mental illness, troubles at home, but it's that damn game that he was playing that caused him to do this.
And this is the problem. D&D, and we've already touched on this. In the real world, real life scenario, actually, and the investigators finally did admit this long after they fucked up the investigation and the media got a hold of it. Events had transpired.
No.
And what most people do not realize is that Dallas Egbert, a year later, committed suicide.
Yeah, he did eventually manage to do
they
it.
thought he got lost in the steam tunnels, right? But then it turned out he had ran away.
Which is exactly what happened here. Is that everybody thought he
ran away to kill himself.
Right. The thing is, though,
he ran away to kill himself. Botched, went with a friend. There's actually another book written by the main investigator, and I'll post this all in the show notes. And he waited. This because the media he had made a statement about D&D and the media just ran away with it, and this is partly why we don't see stories like this in the media as much, because they did it with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they did it with this one, they just ran away with this bullshit, and it got so out of hand that they basically stopped reporting on it. But Dallas Egbert, who the character is based on, really was in real life a very messed up. Was only a child. He was only 17.
If he continued to play Dungeons and Dragons with a group of friends instead of stop playing it, it might have been enough to not push him over the edge to commit suicide. Because it turns out that role playing helps people. It doesn't make them become more suicidal. It makes them become less suicidal.
Yeah,
I think, Stephen, you're getting at a good point. When somebody is, don't try and look at anything else that might be going on in his life that may be causing some of this depression, or maybe exacerbating his depressive problems. Instead, point to the one thing that he's using as a stress relief, and
take that away.
Like when you get to 16 and a half minutes when they're in this darkened dungeon room and they're playing D&D by candlelight and it looks satanic, and he holds out the dice like, oh, I give you a blood offering in the form of little plastic cubes that have numbers. Instead,
another fire hazard.
right. Let's point at that as the problem instead of everything else that's fucked up in his life, including the religious people who are telling him that he can't do what he's doing that helps him relieve the stress from his shitty fucking life.
Yeah, so making him feel guilty for his favorite hobby, for instance. Yeah.
Part of the problem, and I don't know if it was Stephen or Bryce that mentioned this, is that the lack of involvement of professional psychiatric services. Part of the problem is there was involved, not in his case specifically, but I don't know if you guys are familiar with the name Thomas Radecki. He is from the National Coalition of Television Violence, and where he really botched not just this incident but the whole satanic panic is that he cited a fictitious letter written by the character in this the book Mazes and Monsters as proof that D&D causes the death of gamers.
Yeah, the proof was a letter inside of a fictional novel.
Yeah. So you can see where the quote professional help wasn't any help at all.
But
people latched onto it.
Yeah, the solution to that is having more people who are reading and writing and studying about this. If you get one fucking quack, crank asshole that causes all of this stupidity and nonsense, the way that you mitigate the damage that this one asshole did is by getting more people to actually talk about this and study it. And studies... I don't know of any study that has correlated D&D with necessity of exorcisms or demon possession. So
no. In fact, what it is, what this whole phenomenon is just an example of something new that people didn't understand, and they automatically are afraid of it, and they blame and they try to blame it for things. The fact of the matter is, there has been a study done. It's an epidemiological study of tendency towards suicide and playing role-playing games, and it turns out that if you play role-playing games regularly, you are less likely to commit suicide than someone who doesn't. Because you have a peer group that you get together with.
Well, and Trip in the I was just gonna say in the chat, Trip and Fool says, what's the difference between a D&D group and a friggin' prayer group besides dice?
Nothing.
Both are through imagination and fictional characters.
Very exactly. And in fact,
it's part of catharsis.
Something that helps me with my depression and anxiety is I have a role-playing group. Now, we don't play D&D right now. You never know, in the future you might pick it up. We're playing a different game called Shadowrun right now, which is a little more sophisticated. But when I get together with them once a month and play that game, it helps me. It helps me with my depression.
Yep.
And we don't just play the game. We talk about our day. We talk about what's going on in our lives, and we help each other.
Yeah.
Well, and the difference, I think, let's point out the market difference. When you're playing a game of D&D, okay, so I played one game of D&D, and it was a blast. I had so much fun. And I spent this time wandering around a dungeon and fighting these crazy, evil mushroom monsters and trying to figure out this massive conspiracy of these thieves that have gone into this dungeon that's owned by this, amazing oligarch in society, and they'd robbed it, and it was super weird and cool. And there's a portal to the moon, and it's super crazy, and it's wacky, and it relies on imagination to work on all of this. I don't believe that dungeon and the portal to the moon and everything actually exists. Can we draw that line of distinction between religious groups getting together?
You're not afraid of mushroom monsters or anything.
Except for the ones that sing.
Not in my right state of mind, I guess.
And the thing is, like in this movie too, they really kind of seek to portray, like, there's the 4 core characters that are all friends, but they also try to make it seem like those aren't healthy relationships to have, right? Because they have, like, the Tom Hanks character hooks up with the girl at the beginning, and then once he starts believing that he really is a paladin, then they break up, and then she's got to go and be with Blondie there. So I'm like,
talk about daddy issues together. That was super uncomfortable. I was like, oh, go to therapy, ew. And then that's when he was just like, oh, it's just I am a bad boy because girls don't like nice guys. And I'm like, is this the first men's rights activist? Like, my God. And then I was hoping he would die too. And yeah, I'm gonna stand by my fact that JJ is a freaking serial killer, because when he was borrowing that skeleton, that was the weirdest thing. And that black guy, I think, had the most sense out of anybody in the damn movie and was like, "You crazy, JJ?" And I was like, "Yep."
Yeah,
And then he was
is.
like, "I'm going to use this to go and play a new game in a cave." And I was like, I would immediately call the fucking cops. And then when Robbie disappears, he's like, "Oh, maybe it was a freeway killer." And I'm like, "Yeah, you would know. You probably are the fucking freeway killer." I still stand by. After the movie ended, I was like, that then JJ killed everybody in the woods. That's how it's going to end. And then when Robbie
the one eyewitness reports that he saw the killer. All he can make out was he was wearing a tuxedo and a hard hat.
Yeah, I know. He has weird hats all the time, so that's how he evades the police. It's canon.
Oh yeah, because he wears such a goofy hat that everyone focuses on his stupid hat and no one looks at who he is.
That's right, exactly. It's a disguise.
Yeah, and he's rich, so he can cover it up. And
he's a Batman villain. He's Hat Man.
Yeah, and then there is some weird religious overtones. I did notice when the Jesus guy, I guess Hall or whatever, appeared to which is weird because there's a Professor Hall at my law school.
King. What was that? The King of France or no?
No, that was the crazy dude in the subway who then this dude has mental issues, because the crazy dude that lives in the subway is like, this motherfucker's nuts.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, man, I'm a little uncomfortable with how kind of crazy talking you are right now. I want to go back into my cave.
Also, I want to talk about this thing from the 80s too, is the fact that the freaking cops, when they're like, "Oh, our friend's missing," and I was like, "Then call the police." And then everybody was still like, "Oh, let's try to figure it out ourselves." And then they call the police. And then the cops are like, "Oh, did he run off with a woman?" And I was like, that's the most 80s and 90s shit. When a kid goes missing, they're like, "Oh, they ran away." And it's turns out there has been some fucking freeway killer the whole time, and they've all been murdered.
Well,
and the cops are like,
not just that. They start off with, "Oh, he ran away," and immediately turn to, "Oh, he's dead."
Yeah, he's dead now.
There's no body, and I was like, "What the fuck are y'all doing then? Stop asking them questions and go look for him. What the hell is wrong with you?" I thought they were about to all be indicted for murder.
Being gone for 2 days doesn't constitute being missing.
That might be the fill-in that they used, and because in the real case, the school did not notify Egbert's parents until 4 or 5 days after he went missing.
Right.
And that's why they hired the private investigator, Deere, to look into what happened. And as I said, the media then, he had 10 possible theories, and he's actually a very good investigator. He was very, very highly regarded. So that might be the movie's way of filling that.
Right. And for all the listeners that haven't seen the film, here's the basic plot of it. Group of kids get together, play Dungeons and Dragons. One of them takes it a little further, and they decide to do a live action version of it. I don't know why. And then the one character has a psychotic break. Tom Hanks' character has a psychotic break and starts believing it's real. And then he goes off on the deep end and disappears. He ends up in New York City in the Trade Center Tower. And it was really cool to see the Trade Center Tower on the inside, what it looked like.
Yeah, I was like, #never forget.
Yeah, I was like, that's what it was like. Oh, that's neat. Okay. The one positive thing.
I thought that was kind of creepy. I was a little creeped out by that.
He did 9/11.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what's gonna happen.
That's how you get radicalized into Islam.
He went in there to set all of the dynamite charges to do the controlled demolition 25 years later. That's what it was.
Because I have heard of creepy movies where that are pre 9/11 that have predicted or set up to where there's a terrorist threat at the Twin Towers and stuff like that. And I was like, oh no, this is very uncomfortable for me. It got real.
This is it though. You've broken it down. It's MK Ultra, the secret government project to control people's minds. They use Dungeons and Dragons to convince kids to go to the Trade Center Tower and set the charges.
Yep. And they've been setting them all over them for
ever since all the false flags since the 1970s in order to take away our guns.
and our freedom.
And our freedom, which is just guns. That's all freedom is
Yeah.
guns.
Guns.
They're
As many
synonymous.
guns we want. Yeah, but seriously, like the freaking, like I kept yelling this whole movie, like when they figured out that he was alive and ran away to New York and all that stuff, and then they okay, so I love how the like guys that are mugging him are in leather jackets. I actually wrote in my notes, guys in leather jackets equals bad news. But yeah, and then
grease in their hair.
at first
undertone with that is in real life, Dallas Egbert was questioning, for lack of better word, his sexuality.
Yeah. Yep, he was.
When he quote ran away, he kind of botched his suicide. He took sleeping pills, woke up, he went to a gay friend's possible lover, never confirmed, never denied, got passed through the gay culture underground, for lack of better word. He ended up down in Louisiana, so the whole leather scene in the movie probably was a subtle suggestion to that, because in real life that was there. He actually, when he ended up down in Louisiana, it was about a month later, he actually turned himself in to the private investigator Deer. So
yeah,
there were a lot of
again,
undertones if you're not familiar with, and don't forget he was only 16.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Once again, let's blame the game that he's playing with his friends instead of actually, examining what might be going on in his day-to-day life that might be causing depression or these demonic tendencies.
Yeah, let's be honest. The late 70s, early 80s was not a good period of time to be gay.
Yeah, and also
I want to go back to a point. Go ahead, Morgan.
I was gonna say I did not realize he in the cave that he was having a hallucination at first, because I thought this was going to be like it was actually the devil, or again it was JJ's creepy ass.
JJ just did an epic job.
Run! And I thought that it was gonna be that, or that JJ was trying to drive him so crazy, like that he would believe he was in the game and stuff. So I was not sure, but then when he started, like, I saw him all expressionless and then breaking up with his girlfriend, and he's at the Halloween party in the corner, like wearing the hood, like completely expressionless, and I was just like, yeah, if I was at that party, again, another fire hazard, because there was like 1,000 people in that dorm room, and I was like, that does not look fun, like, because they're all cramped in there like a pack of fucking sardines.
They are.
In their Halloween costumes.
I want to point two things out about that. One, no one who can throw a party with that many people show up as a freshman in college would ever play Dungeons and Dragons. Right? Those two things are kind of mutually exclusive. I mean,
or wear a construction hat with a tuxedo.
I wanted to jump strangling to death with my bare hands for that one. But anyway, yes. Big ballin' parties and Dungeons and Dragons may happen when you're an adult. I know some adult Dungeons and Dragons players that are quite popular and throw cocktail parties. When you're in college, you're doing one or the other. You're not doing both those things. That's just ridiculous. Secondly, the whole conceit of this thing is kind of undermined if you think about it. You watch this movie, the whole point was to be a warning to us about the dangers of role-playing games, specifically Dungeons and Dragons. Yet, what I actually see when I watch this movie is the dangers of an untreated mental illness.
Yep.
And not calling the NYPD when your friend runs off to New York.
Right. Even if this movie were real, it would not prove that there's anything dangerous about playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh,
it
yeah.
would prove that a person who's mentally ill, whose parents are goddamn wasps that are so waspy they go bzzz when they talk, and have a terrible relationship and don't pay attention to your mental health, that it could spiral out of control and bad things could happen.
Yep.
Well, this brings me to a question and comment, and something I want Stephen might be able to explain since he's played it. Back in 2006, Paul Lafarge for Believers magazine, yes, a Christian mag, wrote this. What may remain obscure even now is why people would choose to play D&D all night after night for years. Why intelligent human beings would find the actions of imaginary fighters, thieves, dwarves, elves, etc. as they move through a space that exists only notionally and consists more often than not of dimly lit corridors, ruined halls, big damp caves, more compelling than books or movies or television or sleep or so blah blah blah. What he does in his article is he tries to compare it to a written book of fantasy. Like, I like David Eddings, besides, Middle Earth and Tolkien and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't take his analogy far enough. Like, close to my age, you've been playing D&D, I'm going to assume, for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that people can be passionate about a hobby. Like, just what, I played hockey until I was in my 30s.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't
because
understand.
I had a passion for it. And this is the mentality that the Krishnas specifically have towards D&D, and why all the other issues of mental illness are brushed under the carpet.
Yeah, well, the only fantasy you're allowed to have is about Jesus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kinky.
Yeah. Yeah. Those handholds, let me tell you.
My question to you, and we kind of touched on this, is that what is D&D for those of us that really don't know? And I'm one of the few that probably don't.
Okay.
I mean, I know what it is, but why is it not?
The news reporter explained
and
it,
this is
Beth.
one of them.
Yeah, the news reporter
got it
told me
completely
all
wrong.
about it.
That was some dark shit. That's not D&D. You don't work, and they make out like you work out your everyday problems in D&D. That somehow it's a way to take your everyday bullshit. Bullshit.
They made it into a live action game, and D&D, from my understanding, is not.
Yeah,
I got a quip. I got a quip on that though from the Greatest American Hero episode that I watched.
Okay.
They made a big thing out of saying that the Wizards and Warlocks game that they were talking about, which was obviously D&D, it helped you prepare for stuff in your life, like every day.
Like when you run into goblins?
Yes.
Just everyday occurrence on the streets of Oxford here.
Because that comes up more than once, and like near the end of the episode where they're close to solving the mystery, the wife of the Greatest American Hero, she's like really into reading these books on it, and she's like, I really understand this, and I could see, this really does help people and all that. Like,
okay, I got to comment on this before Steven actually answers that, because in my very, very limited experience with D&D, it's a way that it's way more interesting than many movies that I've ever watched, because it's your own imagination walking your own avatar through an imagined scenario. You're not being handheld through a video game campaign or a movie narrative. It's limited only by your own imagination. And in the same regard, imagination is an artistic creation of our mind, and art imitates life. So when you have things going on in your life and you see them writ large, or see a microcosm of something going on in the game, and you see it as analogous to something that's going on in your life, it can help you to process those things. So I think it can be somewhat therapeutic in some way, in just helping you realize things about your own imagination and why you interpret some things in certain ways.
Which I can see. That the show just made it seem like it was 10 times better than like reading a Dale Carnegie book or something.
Those things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
I want to point out, LARPing's been around since the late 70s, and you can LARP D&D. You can LARP any role-playing game. You just have to adapt the rules of it so they can be performed without you having to sit down and roll dice. So there's a chance that I often wondered watching this, did they invent LARPing in this fucking movie, or was LARPing already around? LARPing was already around. LARPing is just getting up in costumes, and instead of rolling dice to see who wins a battle, you actually sword fight with like foam swords.
Is that like when people around here dress up like Confederate soldiers and like?
Yes.
Kind of, yeah.
Yes, exactly like that.
Exactly it.
Yep.
I live in an insane place. Sorry.
Except D&D is a lot less dorky than that shit.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Because they get into it, they're like, "My
Oh,
name
yeah.
is Clemson Jameson the Third."
historic reenactment is right below, is like the bottom of the geek barrel, right? I mean, let's be honest. But I'm sorry if there's anyone then out there listening who likes it. I'm just being facetious. But yeah, it is really dorky. That's fine. I'm wearing a bow tie and talking about Dungeons and Dragons, so I'm no one to judge.
I was gonna say I was in the SCA for a number of years.
So the appeal of tabletop pen and paper role-playing games is very similar to the appeal of video games.
Yeah.
Now, back when that article was written, I'm almost certain that video games weren't what they are now. But what cracks me up is there's still people concerned about Dungeons and Dragons who let their kids play World of Warcraft. And I'm like, you're stupid. It's World of Warcraft is Dungeons and Dragons, except with a realistic three-dimensional universe to play it in instead of a piece of notebook paper. So if anything was going to make you believe the world was real and twist your mind, it would be a video game, not a pen and paper role-playing game. And of course, video games don't do that either. No one believes that video games are real unless they're schizophrenic. And then it's not the video game's fault.
That's right.
Because they would have found anything to pretend.
Yes.
Like when Beth was saying that she was into hockey, I was like, yeah, if Beth had the same problems as Robbie did, then she'd probably be like, I'm Wayne Gretzky. Like,
Right, exactly. You can't blame you can't blame what the mentally ill fixate on for their mental illness. That's not fair.
Yeah.
You take away role playing games, you take away video games, they're going to read a book and think it's real, like the Bible, for instance. Anyway, so moving on. I have a friend who suffers from mental illness, is schizophrenic, and believes God talks to him.
Or that
I would probably
like a lot of people, like, because I remember when I lived in Byram, there was this dude running around. I mean, I think drugs probably were involved.
Yeah, sure. Uh-oh.
Oh, but
oh, you froze up there.
Yeah.
Oh,
you find that mental illness and drug use go together hand in hand. Because
yeah,
it is self-medicating and that kind of thing. But yeah, so this guy was like running around naked by the Sonic drive-in, and he was yelling that he was Jesus, and this like big cop who was like 200 pounds had to like try and chase him down. It was
wow.
That's weird. The funny thing about it. In this movie,
good thing he was white, or the cop would have just shot him.
Yeah, exactly.
We basically told you the whole plot of the movie. We basically told you the whole plot of the movie at this point. They go LARPing in a cave. They think he goes crazy. He breaks up with a girlfriend because his character is supposed to be celibate, right? His character is supposed to be this celibate monk.
Yeah.
Now, I play D&D. There's no celibate shit in D&D. That's not a thing in D&D. Everyone in D&D fucks everyone else if they can.
I was going to say, if you had a hot girl in your group that you were dating and already sleeping with, I don't think you would want to stop that for the sake of being a paladin.
We would probably make the game very uncomfortable by flirting with our characters through the whole game.
Yep.
And wanting to make it too sexual for everyone else, and they would get uncomfortable and say, we don't want to play this anymore. That's probably what would actually happen. Also, if you go into a D&D game and someone says, I am the god of this realm, behold your life, and they're going to be like, you're a fucking idiot. Shut the fuck up and let's play this game.
Fuck out of their house.
That reminds me of the Chick track that came out in regards to D&D, and I'll put the link. Yes, I have the link to the actual track. If you want to purchase it, it's $750.
What?
But, yeah,
well, you'd probably have to buy like 1,000 of them or some shit.
Thank you for reminding me of that fact. But yeah, I'm trying to. I was telling Deb the other night that reviewing this movie and thinking about it brought back a lot of. I think I need to replace all my books that I had surrounding the whole Satanic Panic and D&D and all that stuff. But yeah, there's a trick track that goes. And one of the things too that it reminds me of is that if you break down the movie nitpicky, every little bad aspect of life, you know, celibacy, sex before marriage, drugs, rock and roll, it's all in there. Everything that's quote.
And I love how they have to make the girl like sleep with everyone. Who the only reason she didn't sleep with JJ, I'm sure, is because he was underage.
Yeah, I mean, she dresses like a librarian at a church, but she's sleeping with everybody, right? Yeah,
yeah.
And what I've noticed though is that every one of the characters is actually well, first of all, you can buy Dark Dungeons on the Chick Publications website apparently for very little.
I haven't heard any of what it was just said, but what you're saying, Stephen, I just looked it up on chick.com.
Yeah.
And I'm reading through the Dark Dungeons chick track.
Yep.
And it is fucking glorious.
Oh yeah. She gets brought into a coven of satanic witches, witches and Satanists are different things. God damn it!
Thank you.
That's
why we're having Corvus on.
Yeah.
Oh my god! This is great. Which spell did you cast, Debbie? This is Debbie, who once she reached level 8 in this D&D game, that's when she gets indoctrinated in the actual satanic cult. And then she said, "I used the mind bondage spell on my father." Giggity.
Not a spell. Not a spell.
Yeah. This guy was like jerking it hard when he was writing this. Like he was like, "Oh yeah, mind bonding with Daddy."
Oh no! It's so much better. What was the result? He bought me $200 worth of new D&D figures and manuals. It was great in bold.
Wow.
$200 was money back then? Oh, that's cute. But yeah.
The chick track when I do my show notes for this because I have about 35 pages of notes here.
Also, one thing they get wrong in this that they actually did kind of get right in the movie was when your character dies. Okay, they got it wrong in the movie too. Now that I think about it, if your character dies in a D&D game, you're not done. You don't get kicked out of the group. You're not dead to them. You get to roll up a new character and continue to play. So your half-orc fighter died. That's fine. I'm going to roll up a daggum dwarf cleric. And
they said that. They said that he could bring in a new character, but then what's her name was like, "Oh, but that's going to take him forever, and we're just so much higher in level than some bottom level character." And so they kind of poo-pooed the idea.
When this one though, this girl thinks that she's died. She's been kicked out and you need to leave. Fuck.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to the fact that most of the people that have written from a religionist point of view concerning D&D has never played it.
Yep.
They have no clue what it's about. And I fall into that category, but it's funny because I just never had an interest in it, even when it came out. I didn't develop an interest in fantasy genre until I was in my 30s and 40s.
I have so much to say. Well, first of all, the one line, "Marcy, get out of here. You're dead. You don't exist anymore," is what she says to. Nope, that would never happen in a D&D game unless you were playing with really fucked up people. Secondly, I mean, you could make a rule that when you're dead, you leave the game, I suppose, if you want to be a dick. But most games, like, just roll a new character, you dumbass. You fell in the trap. You should have paid attention. But they always die in traps in these things, too. The fun of D&D, whenever you're a dorky 14-year-old who wants friends, but you have a vivid imagination, you're good at math, and you read a lot, you can get together with a group of people and be accepted into the group playing a character. That's one of the things that D&D can lead to. Second of all, it can lead to you making new friends that you might keep for life. It is something to get together and do together besides sports. Now,
this one time at band camp, I played a D&D match.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I still keep in touch with the people I played D&D with when I was a kid, and we play a game every so often or whatever.
Oh, that's why I wasn't invited. I suck at math.
Well,
yeah.
What
all the other criteria except for good at math. Like,
yeah, well, you don't have to be that good. You don't have to do equations or anything, but you have these different dice with different numbers on them, and you have to calculate like hit points. Hit points is basically how much life you have. And so when you're fighting a dragon and it has hit points and you have hit points, and you roll the dice and add it to your modifier and say, "I got this sword, which give me +1 because it's an awesome sword, which means that I do this much damage." Oh, but the dragon has scales on it that can soak 5 points of damage, and you just these little calculations. You're basically playing a video game, but instead of doing it in the computer, you're doing it on pen and paper with dice. And usually you don't even need a calculator to do these calculations. You can usually just do them on a piece of paper.
And also, just to add to that, I mean, many of modern day RPG video games are based on the foundations that were built by D&D, of the character classes, of the leveling, of the combat, of everything. It's like it's not like video games existed, then D&D was just a pen and paper version. It's like D&D existed, and then they were like, let's make a graphical user interface to really engage people's imaginations.
Sure. Well, first you had D&D, And then you had text-based role-playing games with a computer where instead of having a person tell you the story, the computer told you a story, and there were certain responses you could type in and then react to things. And then move up from that, we end up with graphics. Yep, exactly. We end up with little graphics on the screen, and then eventually now we have these totally immersive ones where we can go in and actually see the battle between the orcs and the elves, you know. And fantasy's not my favorite genre, to be honest with you. I play D&D because my friends like it, and I like playing with my friends. But I do like D&D in one aspect. It is a great way to come up with a story. So if you're a creative person who likes to come up with stories, you want to be the dungeon master, or if it's not D&D, it's a games master. There's two ways you could do it. You can buy pre-made stories that you just read. I've never done it that way. The other way is to come up with your own. You draw up your own maps, you come up with your own creatures, and you have your story. And you get to tell this story, and then the people get to react to your story and maybe take it in a different direction than where you were originally going to go. So then you have to adapt to that. So what D&D teaches you is A, it teaches you interpersonal skills because you got to deal with people. B, it teaches you how to do some simple math. It's a good way for people who are shy to break out of their shell and learn how to interact with other people. It teaches you to be creative, to adapt to new situations, and it's really awesome for people who want to act or be in show business somehow, be comedians.
Right.
Well, what I find oxymoronic about your observation there, Stephen, is the whole concept of role-playing. The religionists, like, poo-poo it away, like, oh, you know, demonic, whatever. But yet, at conversion therapy, one of their main therapeutic devices is role-playing.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting.
Was it good or bad?
Oh, no.
They will have you. Now, I haven't experienced it. I never went through conversion therapy, but I have friends who have. And if you follow the whole debacle surrounding it, one of the things is you beat a pillow to, you know, act out your aggression towards your mommy, your daddy. I mean, it's like, that's all they use is role-playing, but yet they trash D&D and just based on your description, and it's a description I have heard before of the finer points of what it can do for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like both ways.
Right.
For the creative type, I'm a thinker, yes, and I can do more, for lack of a better word, technical aspects, but as far as creativity, I have none.
Well, here's the thing, though.
Never fit for me.
For that type of person, see, there's two ways to play Dungeons & Dragons. Now, the Dungeon Master is a separate thing. He has to be creative, or he has to read from a book and adjudicate the rules. That's the other thing you got to do. You got to make sure no one cheats. What's really fun about Dungeons & Dragons is that you're not playing against each other. You're playing together as a team versus the narrative. So it teaches you to be cooperative as well. Of course, you can also play an evil character if you want to, backstab your entire team and ruin the game, which is something you're allowed to do. Because you can be creative like that.
That would be my brother.
Yeah. But you can also be someone who really gets into the mechanics of the whole thing. Studies the math and the numbers and sees how to level up your character so it's the most powerful possible way of leveling up the character. And work on strategies for defeating the monsters. Like, okay, I have this power, I have this power. How can I use them together? So some people are just strategy players. You just want to figure out the best way to win fights in the game. While others are more role players. And within role playing means you like to interact. Hello, townsperson. I am the paladin, John Smith, and I would like, and try to seduce the barmaid and try to, break into the Thieves Guild and actually do the role-playing aspect of it. Now, I enjoy the role-playing aspect of it. I enjoy getting into a character and trying to play that character.
And there are even some D&D matches where it's like a tentative agreement among all of the players that you do not fucking break that fourth wall. When we are sitting here, we are in character. We're only using stupid old-timey accents. We're only talking with weird voice inflections where we are completely acting this whole thing out. Yeah. And, that teaches all kinds of incredible life skills to be able to, create a fantastical world in your mind and be able to play it out in your head how you want it played out. I mean, that's useful just in everyday conversation.
It's kind of like improv theater or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it really, I think a person could probably write a paper on how it helps people, especially children who are shy, to break out of their shells. Now, Now with my group, we don't do the old timey voices necessarily. We do sometimes how to put on voices, you know, when they're terrible. We try to do like British voices and things like that. But then I have my one friend who's always trying to break the game with dumb jokes. And a lot of my experience with Dungeons and Dragons are people being funny, trying to make humor out of it.
Yeah.
Trying to make everyone crack up during the game by what they do within the game. So if you play with a bunch of comedians like I do, it's just going to be dirty jokes, one right after the other. I do play with a couple of guys that it almost always ends up with sex, because you can have sex in the game if you want to. The game can be anything from very child-friendly to as adult as you want it to be. And there is an unofficial rule book called the Book of Erotic Fantasy, which gives you all the rules about how you could fuck the different races and what venereal diseases there are and everything like that. God. There's even a magical venereal disease. You don't want that one.
I guess not.
No. Things like hobbits tend to have orgies while dwarves mate for life, and elves tend to be bisexual because they get bored being hundreds of years old with just one sex, and all
Makes
this other
sense.
all these other things like that. And so you can do that aspect, or you can be very clean. I mean, I guess one thing that people have a problem with Dungeons and Dragons is that the main goal of it is to kill things and take the treasure. Is what they think. It's what they think it's all about. The thing is, though, you're killing the things that are evil, so you can take the treasure, so you can make better weapons, so you can kill more evil things and eventually save the world. Or you could play it so you're evil and you're collecting all the treasure because you're greedy. You can do anything you want. It's open-ended. It's up to you. So could there be D&D games where the person running the game or the people playing it are actually terrible and they're actually trying to psychologically manipulate people? Yes. But that's true of any hobby you could get involved with. You could always run into terrible people.
There could be people like that in your weekly Bible study.
There are people like that in your weekly Bible study.
Yes, there are. I gotta say, I looked it up out of curiosity, and I'm kind of surprised that the movie rates 19% liked on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh my God. Some of that's got to be ironic.
It has to be. Like, it doesn't...
It's so bad, it's good.
Yeah, it's so old that it doesn't have, like, there aren't any, like, written reviews or anything, but, yeah.
I can kind of speak to that because in my former life, I fell for this shit hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah,
right.
Fair enough.
Oh,
and the way it's presented is basically, to borrow a phrase, the gospel truth.
Yeah.
Plus, Tom Hanks does a really good job in the movie.
He's the only one.
He's the only one.
And just so people realize, this is pre-Big. So this is before Hanks even made it.
To do.
His acting actually kind of stands out as being almost weird because it's so much more earnest and real than every other character.
I know.
Yeah, it does. That really stood out to me. I was like, yeah, I can tell who's the Tom Hanks and who is not.
Yeah, right.
I love the guy playing the cop, though. Oh my God.
I want to point this out.
I was just gonna say I had one exchange with him and Blondie, and the cop says, "Is Robbie a doper?"
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
And Blondie's like, "Hey man, it's just all imagination," and the cop's like, "Is it?"
Yeah. You kids were playing the Dungeons and Dragons, weren't you?
He goes, "Oh, that's far out," and then the cop just says, D&D is a far out game.
Yeah.
Was that supposed to be your big Perry Mason moment, like your big?
I think so.
You know what though? This does reflect the fact that this Satanic Panic. One of the worst things about it was it seeped into law enforcement.
Yes.
Oh yes. God Awful Movies
very badly.
A video that I know somebody. She was not a police officer, but she did work in corrections in some capacity, and she had to watch this video that God Awful Movies actually reviewed not too long ago. And there was this dude, the cop, I guess, or whoever was playing the cop. He had this girl laying down in like a bikini who was super hot and was like, "Oh, the wounds might be here," and like touching all over her body. And I was like, "Oh yes, you need to demonstrate on a live model, obviously." In a
Law
bikini,
enforcement guide
to understand.
Law Enforcement's Guide to Satanic Cults. And I believe the guy who was the star of that film was actually another charlatan who was shown to be lying about being formerly in a satanic cult. And I forget. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I wanted to point out two things. I've been trying to remember to point them out for a while. The character Robbie, that's like the character that he played. He and every other character in the movie are all based on Egbert?
The real guy. Egbert.
Every single one of them has some aspect of him, right?
Yes.
Like they split him into a group. Like one of them's really young. One of them has a hard time at home. One of them is
has mental illness.
Yeah, the computer expert, et cetera, et cetera. They split him into all these characters. And so she just took like him and then just made a bunch of characters out of one character. The other thing I want to point out, though, is towards the end of the movie, they're trying to figure out where he is because he's a danger to himself and others, even though even in his delusion, he manages to disarm and wound a guy trying to mug him, which was actually a cool thing, but he regrets it for some reason.
Because he's a priest. I think he's supposed to be holy and not
draw blood
he's
or
not
whatever.
supposed to, and he couldn't remember why he had a bloody knife with blood all over his hands.
Oh my God, clerics in the game will kick your ass. I don't know where they got this idea that if you were a cleric, you wouldn't want to kill anybody. You get a fucking morning star and you bash their brains in the game. Anyway, that's beside the point. And you turn undead. Turn undead means you make zombies go away. But anyway, or you can be a necromancer if you're an evil version and you could control the zombies. But anyway, so at the end of the movie, they're like, or near the end of the movie, he's gone missing. They're like, we'll use the skills we've learned from our game to save him. I'm like, are they really going to do that? They're going to make out like the game was also good. So they do. They sort of deduce where he is and they go find him. And then you get what you think is the happy ending. He's finally going to get the help he so desperately needs. It almost looked like the game actually saved him in the end instead of dooming him. And then you get the final ending, which is the darkest shit I have ever seen. Where it turns out that, yes, he's home with his parents now, being taken care of them, and he's completely lost his mind and believes he's in the delusion and will never come out of it again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then they say we go and play the game with him one last time. And then I'm like, so what? Then y'all never go see your friend again?
Right. Because it's crazy.
Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
If your friend's ever from an illness, just get away from him and never have anything to do with him again.
Yeah.
For a friend.
And what did the girl said something, that day we learned that we lost hope or some shit.
Lost hope. Yeah.
Jesus.
Like give him medication. Give him medication, and then when you find out your friend's in New York, don't take his word for it that he's going to show up to your friend's house and be like, hey, NYPD, I have a friend who's mentally disturbed. He's white, so I'm pretty sure you won't kill him. So can you please go up there and make sure that he's okay?
Yeah. So basically, what happens in this movie?
Instead, they're like, let's get in our Scooby-Doo van and go up there and then they're like, oh, shucks, doorman, you mean the guy with the severe mental illness didn't tell him to go to the place we told him to?
Didn't follow our instructions exactly as we told him.
We have to find the two towers. The two towers from Tolkien. They're like, that's not D&D, that's Tolkien. I'm like,
I know they did that. They brought that in 3 or 4 times, and I was like, ugh.
And they're like, what would a holy man do? And they're like, go on a quest. And I was like, I would have said a church, but that's
right. Exactly what a holy man do. Diddle some kids and get away with it.
Yeah, oh God, look at all the daycares.
Might find him in a homeless shelter feeding poor people or something, but no, he's on a quest.
I mean, he was with a homeless guy at one point.
That's true.
The King of France, though.
Yeah,
but he wasn't just any homeless guy.
Yeah,
the King of France. Oh, and I loved how every time the girl saw a rat, she was like, ah! I'm like, it's a sewer. You're gonna see rats, people.
Yeah, of course it's the woman, not
the
of
course.
Yeah,
of course. And here, I'd be the one chasing it, going, "Oh, look at the cute little ratty. Do you want a little home?"
It would, for me, it would depend on what kind of footwear I was wearing. Honestly, if I wore my boots down into the sewer, I'd be like, "No big deal." If I'm wearing sandals because I'm trying to authentically play the holy man, I might be jumping up on a stalagmite.
Yeah. Oh, I also want to know, how did Robbie get to New York? Because he left his wallet and all of his money in his dorm room.
And you knew he left his money in dorm because the wallet was open with the money nicely splayed out in a perfect,
so you could see
that he left his money there. That's a good question. He just walked like a holy man would. With his sandals and his staff.
Because he's a paladin, so he's not going to hitchhike, right? Because he wouldn't want to take advantage of other.
So they walk from somewhere.
And he would have been murdered because it was the 80s.
Yeah.
That's true.
He would have been got by like the Green River Killer or some shit.
By other D&D players.
By someone else who's delusion. Someone who's playing an evil game and thought he was a necromancer. I must have bodies for my game.
Okay, Steven, I have a question for you. So when they discover the map, like with the two towers and all that, they go, "Oh, do you think he was playing with another, group?" And they're like, "Oh, he'd never do that." And they were acting as if he got involved with like a rival gang. Like,
You're right.
It's not cool if you go and play with other groups.
No, every one of my friends plays with other groups. It's perfectly fine.
Okay, I didn't think that was. They're acting like.
Go ahead, Morgan.
Oh, I was like, they were acting like he was, they're the Bloods, and then he went and joined with the Crips, and they were like, "Oh, how could he betray us?" And it was just like,
trying to talk me.
What do you mean he's playing Pathfinder? We're not Pathfinder. We're fucking Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, that was
part
just
of
seemed
it
nuts to me.
Is alluding to in the real story, as I said, the private investigator had 10 possible scenarios that he was investigating to narrow down, and in Egbert's room there was what they called a braille map of push pins, but they didn't know what it coincided with.
Right.
The leading theory at the time was that this map that was basically unmarked was the underground tunnels, the steam tunnels that ran under the school, and the one point missing was the room that he went to commit suicide. What Jaffe tried to do was to incorporate parts of the real story into her fictional, and it was basically a fictional account. So there, if you don't know the real story, some of it might be hard to follow or not make any sense. Yeah, she hid a lot of the real story into her fake story. And going back to a point that Stephen made, infiltration into law enforcement, I think it was Jaffe, but it might have been, I know Pasner from Michelle Remembers, another book. They actually did speaking tours and consulted with law enforcement. So their fake ideas really, I mean, some of these people made a good penny off of this crap.
Yep, they sure did.
And how many crimes went unsolved because of their bullshit too? Like
it's just Satanism.
Because they're looking for a satanic cult and not the creepy neighbor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or say a family's child dies and they happen to have a couple of D&D books and some candles. All of a sudden, the police are theorizing that they are a member of a satanic cult and that they sacrificed their kid to Satan. I'm not making that up either. That's not something I made.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, some people's lives have been ruined because of this. There was one case about a child that was actually killed by a dog. But when they brought the child who was bleeding out of the hospital, the doctor did what a doctor would do with a terrible wound. He cut around it with a scalpel and got all the bad part out and then tried to sew it back up. Later on, the coroner says this child was cut with a sharp blade.
That's what surgeons do.
Yeah. So then they blamed the parents because they had some fantasy fiction in their house, some candles, and claimed they were part of some satanic cult. And they spent 20 years in jail before they were exonerated.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they no longer are a couple.
The ramifications of the entire satanic panic was they're still trying to figure it out, but they're saying that as high as 75% of cases that were investigated under this umbrella were.
Yeah, and people say religion is harmless.
Well, and the thing is like we are talking about extreme examples of when it is the absolute worst, but this has nothing of the very subtle psychological influences that the satanic panic had on just things that we treat as everyday things now. When someone says, I'm going to go play a game of D&D with my friends, in the 80s, a person might have been like, oh, you're a Satanist. But now they might, I mean, by and large, they're going to be like, oh, that sounds like fun. Might even ask, can I join you? But it's taken a number of years for us to get past those tiny psychological traits that cause us to be scared of it.
bullshit with music back in the day. Like, before Gene Simmons got his own show and I realized what a giant prick he is, I used to be a huge Kiss fan. And that was like, oh, that means knights in Satan's service, you know? And
oh my God, I heard that so many times. I even heard that growing up, and that was the early 90s. And
yeah.
The late 90s, early 2000s.
First it was communists, and then it was Satanists, and now it's Muslims. Right?
And AC/DC meant Antichrist, Death Child, and yeah.
Well, if you think of it, we're feeling the backlash even today, and I get it kind of on a daily basis, but considering some of the shit I post, I can understand it, is, oh, you're an atheist? Oh, you're a Satanist!
Yeah.
I don't believe in the devil either. And, you know, as an offshoot and in a foreshadowing for things to come, because of this misconception, and I listened to quite a few podcasts concerning the whole, you know, the satanic panic just in the last couple days, and even from the atheist and the skeptic community, although it is much better than it was even just 4 years ago, some of these podcasts were, you know, 4 to 10 years old, a lot of atheists and a lot of skeptic people do not know the difference between Satanism and atheism. They still equate. Very frustrating, and I have friends that are within the Church of Satan. I also have friends that are part of the Satanic Temple, which are atheistic versions of Satanism. I also have friends that are within deistic Satanism, which is the antithesis to Christianity, and they do actually weave in a deity named Satan. But when I mean, we feel it. You know, we feel that backlash, and we're going to have a reverend from the Church of Satan explain what the Church of Satan's view is, and I'm hoping down the road to have snag Lucian, because they're not the same.
Right.
I mean, Church of Satan and theistic Satan, Satanic Temple are different.
Yeah.
They're the same but different, especially in their political views.
So the Beatles were evil communist bastards too, huh?
Yep. When I say
anybody.
Yep. So first it was communists back in the 60s and 70s, you know, communism, hypnotism, and the Beatles. And then it turns out communists are Satanists anyway. So, you know, that sort of fed into the 80s and 90s as Satanists. And now everybody is a communist Satanist Muslim. Like Barack Obama was a communist Satanist Muslim.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the next one. I don't know what the next one will be, but you know.
Antifa.
Yeah.
You know, kind of going on the same thread that you're talking about, Beth. You know, like Satanism in and of itself was created as basically the antithesis of the Catholic Church, from my understanding. And this is like, we are just as in your face as we can possibly be. We don't believe in your God or your devil. We are just what you fear the most incarnate, and they're created as a tongue-in-cheek way for people to publicly oppose a certain authoritarian system. And I find much the same way happening when it comes to these various embodiments, where I don't think the Beatles are anything like when you actually play their records back. It's just a mental trick that makes you think that it's the devil talking. There's I think a certain irony in how some people portray themselves and how some groups act in order to be antithetical to whatever the status quo is. And the people who are part of the status quo view it as that is the embodiment of everything we fight against. And it's a self-perpetuating mechanism. Now, for example, one of the bands I listen to is called Infant Annihilator. and they are just a crazy death metal band talking about child sacrifice and all kinds of abhorrent possible things. And so much of what they talk about in the lyrics is how the church is constantly raping little boys and how stupid dogmatism is, and like they get at some of these fundamental truths. They just do it in a very clever and artistic way. But a person who is part of the status quo listening to that and reading those lyrics is going to say, this is Satan incarnate. This is exactly what my, all of my days at church have been training me for. And it's just, it's just baffling to me that this amount of irony can actually be, can have such a terrible influence on the society at large.
Doesn't that fall under how to make your Mormon friends pee their magic underwear?
Right.
I think part of it, Bryce, is that I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Like, when we confront Christians primarily, which is what we have to deal with here in the States, we'll quote a Bible verse. And they'll say, oh, you're not reading it in context. Deb and I face that quite a bit in our debates. Deb more so than I, because she debates more. But yeah, they look at our culture, so to speak, and just take it at face value, and they don't look at the deeper meaning. And it's a simple out. It's scapegoating. When they don't understand something, it's Satan did it. And you can see it in pretty much all your religionists, especially your big names. They all have an excuse. Well, I didn't do that. It was Satan influencing me.
Well, it's like God of the gaps on the flip side. So everything that's good, I don't know, God did it. Well, anything that's bad, I don't know, Satan did it.
Yeah. Bob Larson, who is part of the Satanic Panic, he was notorious for it. He was caught red-handed. Oh, that was a satanic doppelganger. I can't remember exactly what he was caught doing. I'm like having a brain fart at the moment. But okay, just recently there was a case of a minister who stabbed his wife 123 fucking times. Oh, it was the cough syrup.
Yeah, when I'm on cough syrup, I can't fucking move. Much less stab somebody 123 times.
The problem is, this is a Christian minister who took cough syrup knowing, and part of the reason he took the cough syrup, well, I heard that it will make you feel really good.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So he skipped
I thought Jesus was supposed to make you feel good.
I mean, it's just like...
He was tired. He had a headache.
It's, yeah. But
Jesus was busy finding somebody's car keys.
Right, yeah, that marijuana will make your daughters want to have sex with Mexicans.
Yeah. It's kind of like Pat Robertson. Whenever he finally got out of prison for defrauding people, he comes up and says that whole thing was just a bunch of witches that put a curse on him.
Oh, you mean Jim Baker?
Jim Baker.
Yeah.
Oh, Jim
Baker.
Same thing.
Pile. Same shit, different pile.
Yeah, I picked the wrong shithead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all blur together.
Jim Baker. Yeah.
Well, we should.
You can still use Robertson because of his whole blood diamond bullshit.
Yeah.
Calvin, Ken Ham, they're all, like you said, same pile, different shit.
Yep.
Well, we're about at the end here. Does anybody have any other comments about the film before we start wrapping things up?
A couple. One, they say that he's a level 9 in the movie. Like he's a level 9. A player doesn't get a level. A character gets a level.
I was gonna say
that's stupid. You can have multiple characters too. You don't. But I don't know. Whatever. Yeah. That's about all I have to say. They played that song, by the way, from the opening a couple times in the movie as well.
Yeah, it was pretty awful.
Or saxophone music when it was very inappropriate. Like I thought SNL was going to start up, and then he was just like, "There's a mentally ill man in the subway system. Like, can we not do the jazzy saxophones?"
The death of hope and the loss of our friend.
Oh, there we go.
And so we played the game until the sun began to set, and all the monsters were dead.
Oh, that's why they can't play it again. They killed all the monsters.
Yeah, they lost all their hope. And they lost their friend.
Yeah.
That's what playing this game using your imagination will do. I shut up and watch television.
Oh my god.
Oh god.
That shit is nails on chalkboard to me. Oh.
That's what you call elevator music.
Yeah, what floor am I getting off on?
Yeah.
Hey, at least she's not singing in that part.
Oh god.
Jesus Christ.
That D&D can't be any worse than that for you.
Oh,
You know, and
God.
here's my final thoughts on this. This whole thing,
Yes.
both this woman and her sort of D&D will drive your kids crazy and make them kill themselves or whatever, and then the satanic panic thing caused a bunch of parents to grab their kids and remove them from activities that were healthy for them, that taught them skills, helped them learn how to read and do arithmetic, and then threw them down in front of the television instead because they thought it was better for them. Now just think about that.
That's a good point. For sure.
And another
One
thing I think
more thing to add to the somehow, some way that we can quantify all of the damage that this fucking satanic panic did. There's no way to really do that, but just, you know, add that to one more thing that they did.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Just contributed to the dumbing down of America.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Trump for president.
Oh God, no.
He already is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, now we're living in the utopia that we created from the 80s and 90s. So, yay.
Yeah.
Here we
Yeah.
are.
We have a president to cut Meals on Wheels. I will never stop harping on that. Darth Vader wouldn't have cut Meals on Wheels.
Seriously.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add, and it's something that both Bryce and Stephen pointed on, is the satanic panic is not over.
Nope.
It never was. It's just more hidden and more subtle. And, you know, as I said, Planned Parenthood, we're seeing, you know, the reaction that people have to that. And that's where it's coming out now.
I remember Beyonce's Super Bowl show. They said it was all satanic imagery and all this shit. And I want to put it when Christians talk about...
seeing it in the rise of Illuminati and anti-Mason bullshit. And all.
How far is it going to go? You know, and what you'll notice about Satanists or about Satan worshipers or Luciferians or devil worshipers or whatever they call them is they call anything that isn't mainstream Christianity that.
Yeah.
Like, half the stuff they said about
Jesus
Beyonce.
is the devil.
Yeah, like Beyonce did some stuff that was related to Norse mythology and some other stuff related to Hinduism, and they call that satanic. In what way are those things satanic?
They're not.
Because they're not Jesus.
Yeah, they're not Jesus. So anything that's not Jesus is satanic. So everything's the devil.
I mean, like the Baptists love to say that the Mormons are fucking satanic.
Yep. The Catholics are. The Pope is the Antichrist.
Yep.
Oh God, my aunt.
And that's one thing I was just gonna say with following this. One of the things I am seeing, especially with Diggle-Man being our president and the religious nut freaks he has surrounding him, is anti-Catholicism is rising once again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we're seeing, you know, as Stephen said, anything that's not Christianity.
Yep. And it's funny because
you're fucked.
Because the Christian movement, what was made it so amazing is when they formed it around anti-abortion, is they actually got the Protestants and the Catholics to come together. But that wasn't going to last. That wasn't going.
Yeah,
to
they're
last.
in power now, so they get to be at each other's throats again.
Yeah. But it was all as Asmodeus planned it to be. My dark lord Asmodeus that I serve with my dark paladin.
There you go. Well, and I just wanted to share this GIF that I just found of Tom Hanks killing his. Isn't that awesome?
His cave hallucination. Muhammad
it's
would be proud.
It's called a Goreville.
I don't even think that's a thing.
I don't think so either. It looks like a personified dragon. Like it looks like a dragon
looks like
head.
one of my dreams.
Oh my God, there is a Goreville. Somebody on the D&D homebrew page, it's a wiki where they make up their own creature, has made the Goreville in Dungeons and Dragons, so you can make it a monster in one of your campaigns.
Because of this movie?
Yes.
That's amazing.
I love that. A full fucking circle. Yes.
Well, on that note, I think it's about time to wrap things up. But thank you, everybody,
I'm
for
sorry,
dropping
Deb,
it.
I have to
Yes.
add one more thing that I find so
Yes.
fucked up in a meta sense about all of
Absolutely.
this. The one way to get beyond the stupidity and everything that isn't perfectly embodied in this 1 hour and 40-minute pile of shit film is more education. And unfortunately, built into the entire structure that created the Satanic Panic is disparaging of education.
Yep.
Oh, learned men
Yes.
can't get into heaven. Learned men are fools, and so on and so forth. And when you have a self-perpetuating cycle like that, you can't but expect terrible results.
And let's be honest, all the kids in the movie that went crazy and had horrible times were in
We're
college,
all in school and college.
and they were all smart, and that was their
A
first
damn
problem.
liberal universities.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep. And rich. Rich is evil too.
Rich, of course.
Unless you're rich like Trump, and then it's good.
Or you're Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for dropping in. That was awesome. Bryce, did you want to tell everybody where we can find you?
Of course, I am on Twitter, Facebook, and all of the podcasting hosting places at Naked Mormonism. That's my show, the Serial Mormon History Podcast. And of course, as always, it's a pleasure to come on here, and thank you for inviting me and for having me on.
You're very welcome. By the way, I keep meaning to ask you, what is that brown pile of fur behind you that was there last time you were here too? Not the dog, that thing on your desk.
Oh, we have various stuffed animals around here. This is the derpy sloth.
Oh, it is a sloth. Awesome.
So one thing that's cool is the place that we live in, Annie's office is up in the loft up there, which has a railing above it. So we have all of these stuffed animals around, and we use those as artillery to throw at each other when we're sitting here working on our computers and unsuspecting of it. And you're just typing away, and then a stuffed animal comes and lands on your keyboard. It's like, oh my dog shit. So yeah, that's the derpy sloth. He's one of many pieces of artillery.
I like sloths. I noticed him last time, but he was positioned slightly differently, so I wasn't sure what that was back there. But
get him facing the camera.
There
That's better.
Today I could tell that it was a plushy something, but last time I was like, "Is that like a wig or what is that?"
It might have been something different at the time.
Could have been.
It could have been the cancer panda. It could have been the Shelly the turtle. It could have been a number of our pieces of artillery.
Nice, awesome. By the way, my mother has an actual turtle named Shelly. Funny that.
Amazing. All right then.
My nieces found it on the side of the road, and it now lives in a tank in their living room. Anyway, like anybody cares, but Stephen, thank you.
Little side note. Yep.
Thank you so much for joining us. And is there anything that you wanted to plug or anything like that?
Not right now.
All right,
maybe in a little while I'll have something to plug. I gotta plug away first.
Thanks for joining us anyway. It was great as always.
And if you guys want to get together for a game of D&D, just let me know.
Can you do that online? I've actually never played myself either. I had my boyfriend in high school played, and he never invited me because that was probably the only hour a week that he could have where I wasn't right next to him. Yeah. I was the clingy girlfriend from hell, so I would have hated me. So I can't blame the guy.
You could,
because I asked lots of times to play. I was like, maybe next time. Yeah. So that was my own fault.
Sure. Yeah. You could Skype a game. It's not, there's utilities for that. Yep.
If you're looking to DM Steven, I would like to D&D with you.
Okay. We'll see what we can do. I got a
sweet.
group.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
I could try that. That'd be fun. Morgan, I hopefully I've been plugging you okay the last couple of weeks. That didn't sound very good, but
It suddenly got really hot in here all of a sudden.
But yeah, it started to spin. Did you not see?
Turn. Just take that. Yeah. All right.
Poor Morgan's just like, oh my god.
I can't deal. All right, so you can actually find me on the Bi Skeptical podcast with Trav Mamone. That comes out about every 2 weeks because we love puns. And you can find that on iTunes, Spreaker, and Stitcher. You can also find me on Twitter at Mostring. That's at MOSTRING. And you can also find me on Facebook, Morgan L. Stringer.
Cool. And I've been mentioning that it was MO and not NO because whoever No String is they're probably seeing things they didn't want to see. Well, no, because I've gotten tweets with you supposedly copied in, but it was actually No String. So I'm like, they're probably sick of seeing tweets from us by now, whoever they are.
Oh, I got to point this out before we go.
Yes.
This bullshit about D&D was why my mother grabbed my D&D books when I was in 7th grade and threw them in the fire.
Oh.
Damn, dude.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's
horrible.
One more casualty to the Great Satanic Panic.
Those
God
first
damn it.
edition books might have been worth something nowadays if I still had them.
Oh,
Yeah,
screw you, Professor Stevens' mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, my Harry Potter books got taken away for that same reason.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny. I got to say that I know we're keeping going here, but when I read Harry Potter when I was about 38. I read all of them in one summer. And when I was 38, and I told my mom, and she did not approve. I'm a 38-year-old man living on my own with a career, and my mother's like, "You read what now? Harry Potter? You know that isn't good.
You know that little wizard boy ain't good."
Yeah.
My record in the bottom of a pond.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Well, we're at it. Beth, where can everybody find you?
Easiest way is on Twitter, Dune998, that connects to Facebook and my blog, Havoc and Chaos. And you can also find me on YouTube under Beth A. Hambridge, as well as on Facebook. And if you do send me a message, friend, please send me a PM stating that is why. I've been getting a lot of
That's a hard word.
Anonymous?
Thank you. Requests, but we have no friends in common, so they're getting ignored. But yeah, that's the easiest way. Nothing Hambridge, Facebook, Dune on Twitter.
Awesome. By the way, according to the Chick website, the Dark Dungeons, you can actually get it for 17 cents, but you have to buy a minimum of 25.
I didn't see that earlier.
There's that. Yep.
Yeah.
It's on the actual page, but anyway. That's
At least
my problem.
indoctrination is cheap. Woo!
Yes. See, my conundrum is I would love to order some, but I don't want them to have my fucking money.
I understand how people can become religious. Things happen in their lives and it leads them to that. But if you become religious because of a fucking chick track, you got to be one of the dumbest people on the damn planet.
Yep.
I found a piece of paper, then I found Jesus.
That's right.
Yeah.
He was on the last page.
I thought it was money, and it was just salvation.
Yeah. You think anyone in the world has ever converted to a religion because of one of those fake $20 bills? Anyway.
Oh,
If
fuck.
anything, that would piss me the fuck
I was
off.
like, that's it.
I
I'm an
would be
atheist
like,
now.
fuck you and fuck your Jesus,
That's
because
right.
that's not real money.
Yeah.
Find
One
who
thing
dropped
I
this and
wanted
killed
to
them in their
mention,
sleep.
Yep.
not to interrupt, today we officially hit 200 likes on our group page.
Congratulations!
I didn't even know that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty apropos that it's our 3-year anniversary, and plus we hit 200 likes on the group page.
And it was episode 130. But, well, technically it's not, though, because we had 4 specials with no number. But, you know. Was that a corgi I heard?
Yes.
Oh, corgi. You're so cute. Yeah, Bryce is doggy sitting. I saw him running around in the background there.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, you can find me usually on Holy Crap, the Vlogcast, which is Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. I kind of slept in and missed the show this past week, so Yeah, that my bad. But I am usually there, so I don't see any reason why I won't be there this week. And that's run by the Shujin Tribble, and we talk about all kinds of secular things. And there's a crew of 6 to 8 of us, depending on who gets up at that hour, and all of that. With Joseph in France. And what do we have here?
That's Asmodeus, the Lord of Hell in Dungeons and Dragons. One of the main reasons why people don't like that game that are Christians, because it has the devil in it.
Oh, right, because that's the real devil.
That's the real devil, Asmodeus. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Now, I bet you Shujin's played a game of Dungeons and Dragons.
I would imagine so. I don't know. I've never asked him.
Yep.
I will have to ask him. But we also like to talk a little bit about the Whitefields Educational Foundation. They provide counseling for people who are leaving or have left religion. And the founder of my Book of Mormon podcast, which Bryce forgot to mention, he also co-hosts on, David Michael, he started something called the Taylor Foundation or Taylor Scholarship a few 2 or 3 years ago. And that is a fund that provides funding for people who want the counseling but can't afford it. So that is the whitefieldseducational.org/My Book of Mormon podcast. Great charity. If you have some bucks that you want to put to good use, that would be a good place to go. And we do have a Patreon. If you feel like throwing us a buck or two, that'd be awesome. We do use that to pay for our Spreaker hosting. And we just ran out our we had a limited time discount. That's the word I was looking for. And that's just run out on us. So it costs us more money to do that now. Woo! Yay, capitalism.
Mhm.
So yeah, if you want to throw us a few more bucks anytime, that'd be awesome. We'd appreciate that. So until next week, we will be here, of course, same time, same bat YouTube channel. Thanks again to everybody for coming. Thanks to all our current patrons, our subscribers, and everybody. 3 years. Hard to believe it's been that long already, but it has. And we hope to keep doing it forever until the internet explodes, if that ever happens. Or, everybody goes crazy from playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. Hey, was
Yes.
this our Halloween spooktacular episode?
Kind of, yeah. That's
Right.
why the horns and the Jack the Ripper t-shirts. Yeah.
Okay. I should have dressed up.
Happy Parkiversary, by the way. Congratulations on
Yes.
3 years. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yay. All right. Well, folks, we will be here next week, and we will leave you, as always, with Foda and his human creed for mankind. And we'll see you then.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.